Welcome back to Open Door Conversations. We are super excited about today's topic. We are talking about parenting. Today's title is The Way We Parent. Parenting is more than discipline. I am one of your hosts, Renata.
I am your other host, Fatima, and welcome.
Welcome, welcome. We're opening the door to a new conversation.
This is an interesting conversation, especially one that we are well versed of in our community, and it's the way you parent. Because, think about it, how many times that mom or dad did something when you were growing up and you're like, I am not going to be like that when I get older. I'm not going to do that to my kids. I'm not going to this. I'm not going to that. But I'm sure there's so many of us, and even the two of us, that you hear your parents' voice when you say something to your kids because they said it to you, or you're doing something and you're like, oh my goodness, this reminds me of my mom. Like, and I said I wasn't going to do this.
Right.
And it happens because that's what was inbred into us growing up, as much as we wanted to deny it. Like, I'm not. We were so defiant about not doing something. But now it's like, I said I wasn't gonna do this.
That's true. I know, like, one of the things I called myself the other I don't know that when I was younger, I said, "Ah, I'm never going to say that." But there's one saying my mom used to always say, I can show you better than I can tell you. And I told myself, oh, I just hate it when she says that it gets on my nerves. And I caught myself saying that to my son the other day because he, in his little, you know, alpha male self, he said something to me about what he wasn't going to do. I said, no, he's like, oh, you're not going to do that or something. I said, oh, watch. I can show you better than I can tell you. And I was like, I can't believe it. He's like, what? What's wrong, mom? I'm like, you wouldn't understand.
Right? Or here's one when they don't want to eat it and you hated it as well. Oh, you'll eat it before eat it too. Excuse me. And you're looking like, what does that even mean? But now you're telling your kids when they're like, I'm not gonna eat that, or I'm not hungry, or I don't want that. Well, I bet you'll eat it before eat it too. So you're like, ugh. And so we're just giving little sayings that we grew up and it was like, you know what? Why? That don't even make sense. What are you talking about?
Right.
And so that goes into how your parenting style. How do you parent? Are you parenting from the way that you grew up? And if you are, what did you like about it and what did you not like about it? And those things that you didn't like about it, why are you still doing it?
Yeah.
Because if you didn't like it, why does your child or children deserve it?
Right. And I wonder if most times, in answering that question, it has a lot to do with we just don't know. Right.
Mm.
Like we haven't been exposed to new information. We haven't, read books. Let's be honest. I will say for me, I wasn't introduced to any parenting book, any until not even in school, not in psychology and undergrad, not in, grad school. I was only introduced to parenting books. Guess when? I got to post grad internship and they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to assign you a kid. And I was like, oh, no, I don't work with kids. They were like, oh, you better go to that shelf. They gave you the basics in grad school. You better get you some material. And so here I am. That's where I was introduced to like material or information. And I'm thinking,
Right.
oh, well, that's because I'm in the profession. But what about all of the people in our community or people that we went to school? What were we exposed to if we never left home?
Mm.
If I never left home, and this isn't a knock against my parents, love them, right? Not bashing nothing. But even for them, they weren't exposed to anything different. And so if we're not exposed to new information, a new way of doing things, a new way of thinking, we're going to do probably the exact same thing that we know to do. Why? Because most times behavior is learned.
Absolutely. And that's so interesting that you say that, and it's very, very valid. Um, excuse me. Because like you said, if we had never left home or being in the profession, of course my daughters are way older than my niece and nephew. But at that time, as you said too, I didn't have a book, and we definitely were not even thinking about parenting differently back then because it was what we knew. I think that there was only certain things, going back to what I said earlier, that I knew I did not want to do.
Mhm,
And I
mhm.
did not want her to feel, and so like you said, there's no knock against my parents.
Right.
Because just like they never had a book as for parenting, we never had a book for children. We just show up.
That's it.
you know, and
Mhm.
because we just show up, they just show up as parents. Yeah,
Yeah.
and in our community, just as we face the stigma of mental health right now and seeking therapy and counseling, we face that same stigma of nobody's gonna tell me how to parent my child. Well, although in the back of your head, you don't know, but nobody's going to tell you how you're going to parent your child.
And that mindset, how has that challenged our children, our community, when they go to work, when they're at school, when they go to college, when they get their first job, when they get in relationships?
Mm.
If parents aren't willing to learn something different and be taught something different.
The biggest challenge is we don't know how to relate. We cannot we our voices are silenced because you if we voice our opinion or we express ourselves, we're talking back.
Mm,
And so we learn not to talk back.
mm,
And so, and even in that thought, what came to mind is how much of that is ingrained from enslavement days.
yeah,
How much of that is I have the power in my home, in our community. The power is within my home. I don't feel the control anywhere else. So I'm going to control those that I created,
yeah.
you know. But the way that it's affected us in so many different ways because we don't know how to show up in the world. And
I
I think once we are able individually and collectively to admit that, we can do some real work within the community.
you bring up a good point. I think for me, like leaving home and seeing or having a different experience with other people who had kids when I was early 20. Well, I was
Mhm,
19 when I left home. But in my early 20s, I was, you know, even at early 20s, people already get married and that kind of thing. And I was usually the single person, in
mhm,
the military, living outdoor, whatever. And just being exposed to other people's parenting styles. I think we may have said it on a couple of podcasts before, like, oh, that's a thing. Like people listen to their kids. You get to act like what? Like everything is not yelling, disagreement, like people are all the time out doesn't work. And I'm like, no, I see people, like it being effective. Like there's a different parenting style. I think for me, if I'm being totally honest, and I don't know if I've ever disclosed this to anybody before. No, of course, probably you. But I know for me, I didn't want kids for a long time. And the biggest reason, there are multiple reasons, but one of the biggest reasons why is because I did not want to fail as a parent.
mhm,
That was my biggest fear. I was terrified of parenting and getting it wrong, or not being able to show love because I was dealing with my own stuff, like not sure that I would go in the field that I was in, even though I wanted to. So I bring that up because I will say that a lot of what I've learned was through education.
mhm,
Of course, seeing other people, but that was my biggest fear. And fast forward, I tell this story to some people that I remember, my god brother who we had on the podcast before Jasper, he used to pick with me all the time in our early. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna tell God you're not gonna have kids," and he would be like, "You saying you the Lord's, and the Lord he want you to be obedient. How you?" Like all the things he used to say to me, but I don't think he really understood
Mm,
until years later that I told him why I didn't want to have kids. And so then I remember we were at church one Sunday, and uh, a lady and her daughter the daughter had come up to pray. She was getting ready to leave her parents' house for the first time. She was getting married, and they were going to another state.
okay.
And you know, non-denominational church, but they still have some elements of old school. So they would have everybody close their eyes whenever they pray
Mhm.
at time. And so I remember, and usually I'm a person who like to follow rules, but this particular day, I was in prayer because I had been saying, Lord, if you want me to have kids, then you're gonna have to change my mind. And so I remember this particular day, the Lord said, "Open your eyes and see." And so I looked and I could see, it was like nobody else in the room. And I could see this woman. She anointed her daughter's head with oil, and she just grabbed her face and she just prayed over her. And the Lord said,
Mm,
that is what it is to be a mom. And I was like, oh, of course, I was bawling and crying and all the things. And I said, oh, she covers.
yes.
And he said, yes. She instills and she covers. I said, that was my introduction into what it meant to be a parent or a mom. I said,
Mm,
all right, well, I get that. Of course, you're gonna have to help me. I said, but I get that. And I said, okay, I get it now. Let's go. A decade more before I had kids, for sure. But I think for me, when we talk about, the way we parent, for me at least, I think I had to get to a place where I truly understood first what it meant to be a parent before he showed me anything else.
mm,
That
mm.
foundation.
And it's funny that to say that because as you know, we've had multiple conversations, and I too did not want to be a parent.
Mhm.
It was again fear. I did not want to bring a child into this world. I did not, again, as you said, I did not want to fail. I did not want to be responsible for the life of someone else. And um what is so interesting is that even when it happened, I had so many complications with my daughter. As you know, in the hospital for 5 months, she came 2 months early, and I said, "Okay, Lord, you must really want me to be a parent to this child." Like, you are destined to make me a parent, and you are destined to make her come here, and,
Mhm.
so like you said, it was one of those things that again, love my parents has absolutely nothing to do with them, but it was what I felt, places that I was lacking
Mm.
to be able to be a proper parent and give her what she needed. And if I must say so myself, though, between the 2 of us and then the 4 of us, we some pretty good parents.
Goodbye.
But it was not without learning, understanding, and watching others parent the way we desire to parent our children. Um, of course, out in our community, there would be many that would say, "Oh, you let your kids talk to you like that? Well, how is she talking to me? She's expressing herself, so she cannot have freedom of self-expression." Like, so it's one of those things, of course, back in the day, you have an opinion when I give it to you. No, she has an opinion always. As long as she respectfully gives it to me, we will discuss it. Once the line or boundaries of disrespect are crossed, then we have an issue. but it's not even an issue of yelling. It's not even an issue of whoopings, beatings, whatever you want to call it. It's the issue of number one, the look. And number two, who are you talking to? Bring it down, take the bass out, whatever you got to do. And when you're ready, then you come back and talk to me. But this is what we're not going to do.
I think sometimes in parenting, we forget that people learn by repetition. And so, or that kids come into the world and they just know. It's like, no, like even I have to catch myself sometimes because everybody knows my daughter. She's pretty vocal. I don't know where she gets that from.
I was just about to say that.
All of,
Hmm.
all of her aunties. So she's pretty vocal. And one day I had to catch myself. I'm like, oh, yeah, she doesn't know yet. She hasn't found quote her voice in turn. And what I mean by that is that she's still learning how to exercise that. And it's my job to help guide her in it. And
Mhm,
I think that's the second part, like of our titles, like why the way we parent. It's like parent is not all about discipline, right? One thing I've learned that, of course, by the grace of God that's helped me learn this, he's given that to me is that you're a steward over the
mhm.
direction of this little person's life. You have them for 18 years in your care. I'm entrusting you to parent them well, right? Then you're going to lead, you're going to guide, you're going to direct, you're going to discipline, you're going to instruct. You're going to there are going to be there's multiple facets to parenting. It's not just yelling, screaming, fussing, cussing, fighting, hitting, beating, or whatever else that, people think it is. I remember a couple of things. It is interesting when you have a different mindset about parenting and you go in a community of people who still kind of think the same thing. I remember being in this group of people and um me and my daughter were having, like a conversation, so to speak. And people were looking like, oh, I know, oh, oh, like yeah, yeah, not where I'm from. It'd be, I said, oh, I said, so what is your recourse to that? Oh, we come from, I said, oh, beating. So
Mhm.
to hit my kid because she said she didn't like something or right, what? She has every right to tell somebody that what they said hurt her feelings or that she didn't like that, and to your point, in a respectful way. I said, but when has beating somebody or putting your hands on them ever solved anything?
Mm. So you know what's so interesting is that always seems to be the response.
Mhm.
You know, it's funny because when my husband and I got married, TJ well, there you go. Her name out there now. She had said something to me, and she and I talked about it. But his response to me was, that I don't whoop her enough. Excuse me? Like, I don't have to because my child grew up as to where it wasn't about discipline, needing to whoop her. It was if she even as you know, if she even thought she disappointed me,
Mhm.
that's enough for her. And I'm looking at one of the letters that she wrote to me way back when. That because I've been such a great mom to her, she doesn't want to disappoint me. So again, going back to her, all I had to do was the look or the cock the head to the side, like, wait, we got an issue here. But on the flip side of that, if I were to go off of how I was brought up and how he was brought up, then that would make sense. At any time she decided to voice her opinion or have something to say, then oh, you're gonna get a whooping because you don't talk to me like that. And she's never disrespectful, even at the age that is now. She's
Mhm.
not disrespectful, but that came from allowing her to be her,
Mm.
um, without having to whoop her.
Right.
And it's so interesting that you say that because that just instantly took me back to when he said that. Like,
Yeah.
why is that our first go-to?
Ooh, as you said that, I think because that's what, as I think 2 things. When you mentioned earlier on, that's something in our history that's been passed down. I'm gonna
Mm,
whoop you into submission,
mm,
right? I'm gonna whoop you into, you know, obeying or doing whatever I ask you to do. And I thought to myself, like, if you just think about this logically, we talk about there's different ways to discipline, there's different ways to correct, there's different ways to get people to quote, kids to comply with whatever the request is, right? To get them to be obedient. And um, I think I remember having this conversation with somebody. We were talking about like, kids not eating or whatever the case may be, their mouth open. And so I remember, my daughter was like not even 2, maybe barely just turned or close to it or whatever. They were like, oh, my kids were young. I used to hit them in the mouth. I was startled. I was like, wait, what? I said, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
right?
Because for one, yes, that's my child. However, I'm the age I am, and this is not even a 2-year-old. What does that do to her psyche?
Mm,
That somebody's bigger than her is okay with putting their hands on her in that way. First of all, nobody's calling CPS on me. Okay.
that part.
But I'm like, no, this is a 2-year-old. Her executive functioning, her brain is not even online yet. So no, parenting is all about repetition. If you want to learn patience, become a parent.
Become a parent. Yes, indeed.
And
Yes.
I need to go out and be a parent now. Say, put it in order. But you know what I'm saying? Like, like you want some patience? Parenting that absolutely will give you patience.
You know what's interesting is, as you were talking, I looked up the word parent, and
Mhm,
it just says a father or mother, you know. And then what is the role of a parent is parents have the duty to protect their children's rights until they are old enough to make their own way in the world, the authority to make decisions concerning and affecting the care, welfare, and proper development of the child is known as parental responsibility.
mhm.
Where does the love come in? Where does the guidance come in? Where does the, as you said, the instruction come in? See, that word stung authority because that's where parents are at. That's mine. That's my child. I have the right. I'm this, I'm that. And yes, we do all take authority over our children, but that is to protect them. That is in protection. That's when, someone is saying or doing something to your child and you're like, hold on, that's mine. We're not doing that. That's not what we doing, you
Right,
know, but we don't take authority over them personally.
right.
Um, so that definition struck me to what is the proper definition of parenting? And so that's one question that I'll ask you. And the second question is because it's how we were raised and how we were taught, how do you change your parenting style now?
That first question, I think you already answered that. I'm serious. I really do. Um, because to your point, I think you brought up like, where is the love? And everything should be done in love. Like how you parent, like how you lead, how you instruct, how you discipline, how you correct. Here's one that's not even in the definition. What about praising them?
Yes.
Like I think about this parent coaching that we've been doing with our youngest because he's like the easiest one to do it with. So we chose him. But looking at that, the first half of that training, that parent coaching was or is all about positive and all about love and all about edification and
Mhm.
for weeks. Like, so many people, the coach told us was that so many people come in and it is hard for them to even communicate in that way with their kids. That
Wow.
she has to spend months getting people just familiar with language that just simple things like they're playing because that's the way like instructed play, so to speak. And no, not instructed play, but like play time for a certain amount of time, right?
Mhm.
And in that, that's where she's teaching the skills. But the first few should be like what should be a few weeks because you should already be, um, encouraging your child, praising them, and that kind of thing. That she's like, some people take months because they haven't and mastered it. And that's just like giving them 10 of these positive interactions in 5 minutes, just 10.
Wow.
And so when you think about that, where's the love? Like we are so quick sometimes to tell people all the things they aren't right, the negative things they're doing right, but never praising or very little times praising them for the things. Like, something as simple as I watch my kids, sometimes they'll do stuff nobody ever asked them to do anything.
Mm.
I go in my son's room, I'm like, he's cleaning up at 3, nobody's asked him to do anything. Now, sometimes the stuff is all in the closet, but you go in there and he's on the bed, flapping his covers, calling himself making up the bed, and you walk past and nobody's asked him to do that, and I'm like, "My goodness." I'm like, "Buddy," I'm like, "You cleaned up your room by yourself." I was like, "Oh my good." Just praise him for that
Mhm.
versus he throws something he shouldn't have been throwing, and the first all he hear is your negativity or
All
your
the time, yeah.
all the time. So I think to that point, what do you do? How do you change your parenting? I personally believe we gotta be intentional about that.
Mm.
Like, you have to be intentional. There should be a desire to not want to, um, maybe have your child experience some of the things because if we honest, think about some of the experiences you had growing up, maybe, you know, and how unpleasant maybe they were. Like I said, I think on a couple episodes before, I've had that conversation with my mom. We've talked about it. And there's no hard feelings or whatever. We talk about, hey, I did what I knew to do. Woo, water under the bridge. But that still had an impact.
Right.
And now we talk about what does that need to look like for the next generation?
And, to your point with the talking about it, I as you know, I talk to my, daughter all the time, and she grew up with me telling her, "If I don't always get it right, let me know what I got wrong." And I always do a check-in with her is, "Am I doing okay as a mom? What is it that you need from me? Am I giving it to you?" She grew up with that, and as I was listening to you about Buddy and the praise and building that relationship, and I don't care, number 1, let's get
Mhm.
that straight, and as y'all continue to learn us and grow with us, you will understand, once again, Fatima is the one that is a cross between praise is what I do and nuck if you buck. So, when it comes to my daughter, I don't care. But you and I had the conversation about, which is hilarious, some of the criticism that I do get about the relationship that she and I have.
Mm. Mhm.
And it's so many people say, "Oh, you're overprotective," or "You don't let her go out into the world, you don't let her grow." No, see, what the different is totally different. She
Mhm.
is comfortable with the relationship that we have. She's
Mm.
like, "Why do I need to run out into the world and create bills and get myself into debt when at this point in time, I don't desire to and I don't need to? So why am I gonna run away from home?" See, we was ready to leave home. Like we was ready. I can't wait to get out of here. She like, no, I'm good. And when I do move, I'm moving next door. you know, but my thing that goes back, and we'll have this conversation too about us putting our children out because they're our age.
Mm,
No, she pays her own bills.
mhm.
She cleans the house, she cooks, she does all of that. Everything that she would do paying 1,200 $1,300 for either mortgage or rent, she does that here. So why would I put her out there to go do that when she has yet to be in a serious relationship to where they're getting married. She doesn't have kids, and I had a cousin that said, "Well, so she could learn and figure it out on her own. Her being there with you, um, she knows that she has you to fall back on." I said, "If she lived across the country down the street, she's gonna always have me to fall back on. That is not gonna change because she doesn't live in my house."
Mm, yeah.
But that again is the parenting style that I chose. Now, not everyone has to agree with it. But again, going back to that authority over, that was mine. So that's what I'm doing.
Listen, I think I wonder because in working with people from different cultures, um, I'm not saying that's all the time or that's most often, but I'm curious because it seems that Americans are the ones who do that most.
Mm,
There are many cultures who believe in you stay home until, right? And so I know, like you said, this will be a topic for a different discussion. But yeah, I think that's a good point. Why are we so quick to kind of push people out? Like our job is over, parenting is over when you're 18. I think one of the things I've learned is that parenting shifts with 18. It's not that you are still and always will be a parent. Your role as mom or dad won't ever change because that's how it's they're always gonna be that.
yes.
The function of your role will change once they hit 18, but the role itself, the title, so to speak, the relation, it won't change. You will still be a parent. It's just the function of your role shifts, once they turn 18. Um, I was gonna ask, what are some things that you and I guess I can answer this too, but what are some of the things that you feel have impacted you in relation to how you were parented?
Mhm. One of the things that I can say is definitely not feeling as though I had a voice. And to be honest, that was one of the things that actually led me into counseling.
Mhm,
Because I didn't want anyone to ever feel like they didn't have a voice. Um, you know, Understanding, just being present was a big thing. Being present to understand my child, to understand children. Um, because again, growing up when I grew up, not that I'm old, y'all, but
mm,
things was definitely different then. It was still that, you have an opinion when I give it to you. Um, I'm your mom, not your friend. And that's one thing right there. I'm your mom, not your friend. That we need to understand how to we definitely need to separate the two, but you can be both because your child needs you to be their friend because they need to get it from you before they get it out there in the world, from their so-called friends. Um, so I think just not wanting to model the same behavior that I saw or that I experienced growing up made me intentional, to use your word, about how I raised mine.
mm. That's good. That's good. Mm, yeah. Wow, that's good. I don't know if I have a comeback. I don't. not that he needs a comeback. I'm like, wow. Yeah.
Well, yeah, not that it needs a comeback, but the same question as you said back to you. That how what made it about? What was it about? What experiences or what made you again
I
intentional about how you parent?
I think for me, very similar to you, right? Not having a voice, I think because of that, some of the things that I believed about myself or some of the ways in which I showed up in relationship or, um, you know, how I showed up in the world. I will say for the longest time, honestly, I thought I was an introvert. And once I, went to therapy myself and got out of some of the old mindsets or things that I believed about me, I realized I had the freedom to be who I really was. And I tell people that now in therapy. They're like, oh, well, I'm not really a people person. I was able, and I'm like, well, is that who you really are? Or is that a function of your environment where what you came out of? And I will say for me, what I came out of really shaped how I saw myself and how I behaved and what I thought was acceptable or not. And I felt very limited in
Mm,
some of the things that I believed about me or my ability to do something. Like I say now, there are um, decisions or choices or opportunities that I did not take because I was
yes.
fearful based upon some of the ways that I was parented. And so I learned that I got to be careful with my no.
Mm,
Careful with some of the things that I say. Like I don't ever tell my daughter. I remember, me and my daughter were having a conversation about something, and she said, and I said, no, I said, you can tell me anything. You can always talk to me about anything. And then a few weeks later, she was saying something. I was kind of rushing her off the bed because it was late. I'm exhausted. And she said, but mom, wait, you told me that I could tell
mhm.
you about anything. I said, stop the press. I sure did. Let me get myself together. Give me a moment. You are absolutely right. I
Right.
did tell you that, and you are absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me that I said that because it's right. You can talk to me about anything. What would you like to talk about? And she bopped on in her bed and she started talking about all the things, and about her day and little stuff that happened at school. And I thought to myself, I am so glad that I learned something different because I know at her age, I didn't have that freedom, to just be myself and express. And I look at her now, both of my kids, and that's like the sky literally there's no limit. They have so much confidence. And I truly believe that has a lot to do with me being very intentional about how I want to parent and the stuff that I say to them because it can impact them. It will affect them and potentially and people don't realize it. The things you say, like the cringeworthy stuff that you see people saying to their kids when you at the grocery store,
Yes.
somebody cussing their kid out and saying all kind of stuff to them. Trust me when I tell you, they will end up on somebody's couch
Yes.
struggling to unlearn some of the things that they believe about themselves, about the world, about other people, about how who they are, trying to unpack that and unlearn that and learn something else different about themselves. And sometimes that's not society that's spoken that to them or over them. That's the stuff they hear in their own family.
Most times, it's the stuff they hear in their own family.
I was
We
being
want
now you know me, I was trying to be nice about
no, we not, but see, we we not gonna be nice, we gonna be
we're gonna
real.
be real. And you're right. That's true.
But I like that, that's
Most times it's the stuff that we hear from our own family that causes us the most anguish
yeah,
and pain.
it is. And so with that, you have 2 books.
I do. We want to give you some resources, in your area. Sometimes they offer parenting workshops. One thing that I would tell people is that most county agencies, like the mental health county agencies, like through either the child system of care, adult system of care, or CPS or APS or whatever it's called in your particular state and county, most counties will offer services or courses or classes on parenting. And a lot of times they're free. Some I know now with COVID, a lot of them are on Zoom. Like through our kids' school, they're offering like a couple week course, I think for like a month free to the parents that, go there on what they call positive parenting. Excuse me, there are a ton of Facebook groups out there that offer some
Mhm.
same information. Um, but there are two books that I wanted to recommend. One being Parenting with Love and Logic. And Love and Logic is like I would say like a trademark course, so to speak. You could Google Love and Logic on online, and they usually will have training sometimes in your area, or you can find like I think the online version. You can take the online version. But Parenting with Love and Logic, and Foster Klein and Jim Fay are the authors of that particular book. And then Positive Discipline for today's for today's busy and overwhelmed parent. And this book is by Jane Nelson, but it's spelled Nelsen. And Christina Bill and Joy, I don't want to mispronounce her name, but I'll spell it for you. Marchese. I wasn't going to try that.
Yeah.
Miss Joy. I want to be right by you, Miss Joy, in case you ever get a wind of this, of this podcast. But I think, like Love and Logic is a great course. We've taken it like, now I think I took on another podcast. We talked about the course that what we're going through. It's called PCIT. And PCIT is like I call it parent coaching, but the person literally is coaching you through how to implement positive parenting strategies, positive verbiage, and then also how to deal with tantrums. And, when children want to not obey or follow the rules and all the things. So it's been a great program. It can be a little pricey.
And I'll say this, I'll say this to our people out there, to our community and our culture. Yes, Black people do that.
Mm.
Yeah, and we need to do that. We need to change and adopt a new parenting style in order to continue to make our kids great and be able to show up in this world authentically and truly themselves. You
Right.
know, I think that's one of the first things that we oh we don't do that. We might need to do that. That might be part of the problem.
Yeah, it is. Like I still get the eyeball.
Girl, who?
I do. But I do, but I give the eyeballs with love. Now my kids know, like,
But even at the age that she is and all my nieces and nephews are, they already know that look like, oh, auntie's not playing. No, ma'am, no, sir. I am not. But that's all. One thing I love about it though is that's all that I have to do. I don't have to do anything else.
yeah.
I don't have to yell. And it's funny, real quick, we were somewhere and in the drive-through and the young lady upset me and I didn't yell, but the tone of my voice changed and my nephew started crying
Oh,
because he had never heard that tone from me before.
mhm.
And so he said I was being mean to her and I needed to say I was sorry to her. So it was really interesting to me. I was like, 8 years of living and you've never heard that tone? But because the tone is intentional,
Mhm.
and so they all know what comes behind that tone.
Yeah,
And so that's all I have to do is give the eyeballs or cock the head to the side like this what we doing?
right, right. And tone doesn't mean yelling or screaming. right?
Absolutely.
But I think to your point, we do as a community really need to consider different parenting styles because the truth about the matter is this: there's a whole world out there that will tell our kids and treat our kids in a certain way and cause them to unfortunately deal with mental health issues, whether that's psychological, emotional, right? They manifest sometimes physical. A lot of what we see in our justice system
Mm,
has a lot to do.
uses that word loosely. Go ahead.
I'm using it very loose. A lot of what we see, yes, the laws obviously are not always in our community's favor, but a lot of what we see has its root in how our kids were parented and the experience they had in our home first.
Mm,
So
well,
um, I pray that we have a drove of parents and listeners, and it just permeates our community that we want to have a different experience in our parenting style. That's my hope. That is my hope.
so I'm sure you know what I'm writing down as a thought for our another conference that we will be having.
Oh yeah, yeah, audience. That's something we really want to be able to do for our community. Is podcast is wonderful, but I know that sometimes being able to have in person engagement is needed, and so that's something that we would definitely like to offer in the future is nationwide events to bring some of these topics, into the same listening space for,
Yes.
for people. Yeah, bring some experts.
And one thing that before we close out too is that I wanted to emphasize as well is the agencies that Renata mentioned. You don't have to be in the system to attain the parent
Mhm,
classes.
mhm.
They are open. They are free to the public. So if you desire to research them in your local area and to attend them, you do not have to be a part of the system to go to those parenting classes.
Yeah,
Just want to put that out there.
yep,
So we
yep.
don't have no excuses.
We don't have any excuses. And if they don't have them, sometimes you can look on, Google or therapist directories like Psychology Today or therapist.com or some of these other therapist directories where they are offering, courses like some counseling agencies. If you Google counseling agencies in my area, sometimes people are putting on different workshops. And so,
And
there-
here's one, bring it to the attention of your church, because I guarantee you, you aren't the only one. Bring it to the attention of your children's school. I guarantee you, you aren't the only one. So if
right,
it's something that you truly desire, bring it to the attention of those entities so that it can be implemented as well.
yeah.
So that was a good door opener.
That was a great door opener. I'm so glad that I hope people enjoy it. I enjoyed this conversation because it's like I said when I started in the beginning, like the fear I had of being a parent, and it's one of my greatest experiences in my life today is to have the opportunity to be a mom. That's a blessing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely total blessing that I would be counted honored
Yes.
by the Lord to be a mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, it goes back to, when it in the Bible, when it says that her children call her blessed, you know, but I am the one that is blessed by them.
Yes.
When you just see the little things and you realize, oh, they got it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, it's an amazing, amazing thing, and like you said, I enjoyed this conversation. I could really go on and on about this conversation, well, literally all of our conversations, um, but I really enjoyed this one. because, like you said, we are the root to how our children begin to see themselves.
It's
And
true.
we can blame it on the world all day long, but it starts at home.
That part. That part. And on
Yes.
that note, and on that listen, that part, on that note, have a fantastic day,
And we
and
will
thank
see you on the next episode of Open Door Conversations. And Miss Renata will give you our handles. Girl, we got handles.
we got handles, we got handles, we got handles. Yeah. If you wanna connect with us, you can do so, by reaching out to us on email at opendoorconvo@gmail.com, or you can reach us on Instagram or Facebook at Open Door Convo. Until next time.
Until next time.